I'm excited to have another conversation with you. We want to introduce what the Class C is, but I think that was a beautiful way to describe it.
They came in thinking Class A motorhome. They left with a Class C motorhome.
Who do you think is the ideal, Class C owner? What are some of the advantages or possibly disadvantages if there are any? How would you categorize the Super C? How do you think it got its name? And how is it similar to a Class C?
You can get as big as you want when you get into the Super Cs. They can handle the workload. The Class C motorhome works for a lot of people. Feel of the wheel makes the deal.
Welcome back to The Perfect RV Match, the podcast where we help you find the RV that fits your lifestyle. Today we are talking about one of the most versatile and popular motorhome types on the road, and that is the Class C. And we're going to take it a step further and explore its bigger, bolder sibling, the Super C. If you've ever wondered what makes a Class C different from other RVs or what exactly a Class C is, this episode is for you. Plus, we'll talk about who they're best suited for and why a Super C might be worth the upgrade if you're looking for more size, power, and luxury. Joining me again is Karl, one of our most experienced sales experts here at Mesa Rec. And in this conversation, we'll be discussing the key differences between the Class C and other motorhome types, what makes a Super C stand out and the extra capabilities that it brings, and how to figure out if one of these motorhomes is your perfect RV match. By the end, you'll know exactly which style might be right for your next adventure. So let's get started. Karl, welcome back. I'm excited to have another conversation with you since we're talking about Class Cs today, and you've, I know, helped a ton of customers in the past find a Class C that worked for them. Is there any memorable stories to start out with that you can share of someone finding that and just knowing that it was the right fit for them?
Yes, thank you, Lauren. So yes, I had a family come in, and they came in looking for like a Class A motorhome. That's what they thought they wanted.
Okay.
And walking them through the dealership, talking to them, looking at different motorhomes, we finally came into the C motorhomes, the Class C motorhomes, and went inside, and the kids immediately jumped up into the overhead compartment over the driver and passenger seat and called it their fort. So here we are. We jump into this motorhome. Husband and wife are looking around. Husband's outside looking at compartments. The kids are up in the cab, and they've already started playing fort and closing the curtains. And so when we got out on the test drive, the husband, he's driving the motorhome, and he says, "This feels so much like my truck." And these Class C motorhomes, a lot of them are built on a large, like an F350 or an F450 chassis, which is really a large truck. So we have our airbags, we have everything that would be in the Class C motorhomes, same as what's in your truck.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, and I know that we want to introduce what the Class C is, but I think that was a beautiful way to describe it because those are actually unique features that I even know about that. I didn't even think about, but it does make it so different from the Class A experience.
Yes, and before we got back to the dealership, it was funny to listen to the husband and wife talk because I was sitting back with the kids, and by the way, we had seatbelts for the kids. And that sale was made, not by what Karl said, because I do zero high pressure, but the coach, the Class C motorhome. Now remember, they came in thinking Class A motorhome. They left with a Class C motorhome. The kids love the bunk. He can drive it. It's just like his truck, and it's not too darn big. Some of our big Class A motorhomes can get 45 feet long. Way too big for somebody that's like a family coming in. You don't need a 45-footer going through an RV park.
That makes sense. And we're going to talk about some of those differences because I know not everyone is familiar with the different classes. So if you were brand new and you don't know what a Class C is, you don't know what a Class A is, visually you might be able to see the difference, but you're unfamiliar. How would you share that, those differences?
So the Class C motorhome for a family is much more palatable financially for them to own. And I'm just telling you, you cannot get the smile off the kids' face when they jumped in that. And we all remember being a kid. I did it as a kid.
So that's a great point. And, I think the Class C, what I was going to ask you was just what makes it stand out. But it sounds like that is really one of those things, as far as the drivability and for families.
Yeah, it hit all of their hot buttons. I mean, it really did. And I think if I would have continued to just show them what they came to look for, Class A motorhomes, and I didn't try to steer them any which direction. It was, like I said, the kids. The wife loved the kitchen. She liked the king-size bed, and the drivability was just like the husband's truck.
Yeah.
So everything just worked. It came together perfectly.
Yeah, that truck style, cab over is like the standout feature of the Class C and what really makes it different in what it offers.
Well, and a lot of people don't realize, but when you have that cab over top of the driver's compartment, it actually looks like a C. So it's like a Class C motorhome.
That's a good way to remember it. Yeah. No, that's awesome. I love that. Who do you think is the ideal Class C owner? What are some of the advantages or possibly disadvantages, if there are any?
Super question. So here's the thing. When people come in looking at motorhomes and they don't know what they want, many people go to the Class C motorhome, especially if it's their first venture into the RV world.
Okay, so, first-time buyers, this might be a good...
So absolutely, the best thing is the drivability. They go up to about 35 feet, not 45 feet. Okay. So it's much shorter. You can get into most RV parks or state parks. So, different from a big Class A motorhome on a turbo diesel Freightliner chassis versus a Ford or Chevrolet chassis, which gets a little bit better gas mileage, easier to drive. Maybe the wife wants to put 3 hours in, the husband wants to put 3 hours in. Now they're at their destination and having a glass of wine. The Class C motorhome works for a lot of people.
Okay, that makes sense. Very versatile.
Very
and it makes
versatile.
sense that it kind of feels like it's in the middle of all the categories. It's not the smallest, but, comfort, drivability, but size-wise. I do want to talk a little bit about size because you mentioned the Freightliner, and even though the Class C does tend to be maybe for entry level for families and, people that you mentioned, but we also have the Super C.
Very nice.
So how is that different? How would you categorize the Super C? How do you think it got its name, and how is it similar to a Class C, but it is bigger, like you mentioned that a Class A would be. So tell me more.
So the Super C can come on a Ford chassis, just like the regular Class C, but now it's going to be a Power Stroke 4x4 many times, up to 35 feet. Versus a Freightliner chassis Class A motorhome, 45 feet. That's made to go into an RV park, plug in, and stay for a month or so. Mm-hmm. And many times they'll tow their vehicle with them. So the Super C motorhome is not on your gas chassis. It's typically going to be a diesel. It's much, much more robust. So instead of 56 gallons of fuel on board, many of them have 100-gallon fuel tanks.
Wow.
So the distance you can go without stopping, everything that you can bring with you, so that chassis can take much, much more weight, and many of them can tow up to 20 or 30,000 pounds.
Okay, that's a big difference.
A regular Class C on the Ford gas or Chevrolet chassis is typically between 3,500 and 5,000 pound towing capacity. So you could tow a small Honda Accord, for example. On a Super C, you could bring your F-150, tow it behind, or a stackable car trailer. You can get as big as you want when you get into the Super Cs. They can handle the workload.
Wow. Okay, that makes sense. That's where it kind of gets that name, Super C. Still has that C shape.
Still has the C shape.
Mentioned.
Yep.
But bigger, more storage is what I'm hearing. More towing capacity is definitely a really big deal. Those are two different types of trips.
Yes. So the Class C motorhome, typically on the Ford gas engine or Chevy gas engine, is really great for shorter type trips. Now, remember, you could still take that across the United States. You could be gone for 2 months, but your comfort level may not be such that where a Super C, where you've got extra fuel capacity, you can bring extra gear down below, and that robust Freightliner or F600 chassis is much more comfortable to go long, like on a long trip. Even if you take a typical Class C V8 engine gas and you zip up to Woods Canyon Lake, you spend 3 days with the kids and you do a little fishing and you're back home and work on Monday, perfect trip. But for a couple that may be retired, they don't like the feel of a big Class A motorhome, they jump into a Super C and they want to go to Florida and spend a month. Go do it. You've got the perfect luxury On the interior, you've got a very robust chassis that's going to make sure it gets you there without breaking down. It's just a wonderful way to go on a Super C platform.
That's a really interesting point, Karl, because, I was wondering what the differences are on some of the Super Cs can be as large as a Class A, and other than the look of the C, what really makes them different. But as you pointed out, the drivability is definitely different with the Class C, and sometimes customers may be more comfortable with that.
Yes, you're right, Lauren. So on those Super Cs, we've got chassis that are an F550 chassis. When you open the front door on that unit, it looks just like a guy's truck that he's got in his driveway. It's got the same buttons at the same place. And then we move all the way up to the Freightliner chassis, which then again can haul much more than just 5,000 pounds like a little Honda. It can haul up to 20 and sometimes 30,000 pounds on that Freightliner chassis. It's very, very robust. It's built to go long distance, just like a big diesel truck that hauls our food around. They can go from here to Florida, get there easily. They're not stressed. They're not fighting this big Class A motorhome. Now, Class Super C motorhomes are not for everybody. A lot of people go to the Class A motorhomes for whatever their reasons are, but many, many people love the Super C. And in the past 2 years, the Super Cs have started developing a lot more traction. Here at La Mesa, we are now carrying a lot more Super Cs from a F550 chassis, Ford, all the way up to Freightliner.
Okay, now if people come in, can they see and potentially drive those different options? Like all of those are carried to really walk through the differences?
It is highly recommended to drive whatever motorhome you're starting to hone in on. The drivability is the big part of it. You're 8 hours on the road driving, you're 4 hours sitting under the awning having a glass of wine, and then you're sleeping. So 8 hours of the day you're driving that thing. I think a test drive is critical.
Okay, that's really, really good feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. And you can do that. You can come in, you can take a test drive with you, so they can definitely get that experience.
Yes,
here.
Test drives are critical. I'm not going to belabor the point, but test drives make the feel of the wheel makes the deal.
I love that. So definitely test drive. If you're right there, that's probably the matchmaking that happens right there. Is you're going to know when you drive it.
Just like the young family that came in looking for the Class C motorhome or Class A motorhome, and the kids jumped up front. The minute he drove and he said to his wife, "It feels like I'm driving my truck," she actually relaxed. She knows that she could drive that motorhome. He was like, "Honey, it feels like my truck."
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so to summarize kind of the differences, there's a lot to unpack, obviously, but to simplify the difference between that Class A diesel and the Super C, tell me just like a quick summary of how those two compare. Who would buy that Class A over the Super C?
Okay, Super C. Number one, I'm going to include racers, and the only reason I'm going to include racers is they typically haul a stackable trailer behind with all of their tools. And on a diesel pusher, if this is the rear end and this is where we're going to hook to it, the diesel pusher might be getting a lot of weight to where it's not balanced.
On the Class A?
On the Class A.
Okay.
Racers like to buy Class C because the engine's up front. When they hook their car trailer to the back and it pushes down on it, that engine keeps everything level. It's very, very comfortable to drive pulling that much weight. Diesel pusher is going to give you a lot more square footage. A Class A diesel pusher is going to give you a lot more square footage.
In the inside, livable space.
Livable space.
Okay.
And those people typically come to Arizona. They snowbird here, so they'll bring their little Honda behind it, and they'll plug in for 5 or 6 months, and that's their home. The Super C on a Freightliner chassis, the big boys, those are the ones that are not as intimidating to drive, but you still bring all the luxury or your hydronic heating that we talked about. It all comes with you.
So you're still getting that luxury feel out of both.
Yes.
But depending on what you're towing, and depending on how long you're staying, that's going to be that differentiating factor.
And your lifestyle.
Yeah, your lifestyle.
Yeah,
all boils down to lifestyle.
A lot of retired people will buy the Class A motorhome, and that's what they drive. But my gosh, some of them get intimidated because that front end is so huge. I've seen a lot of couples go to the Super C just because of the intimidation factor.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. What features do you find, Karl, that customers that go into the Class C or even the Super C just can't live without?
So I think the Class C motorhome, it comes down to a lot of like the sleeping arrangements. A lot of them have a table that makes into a bed. We got the little fort up top where the kids can jump up, and then, an RV queen for mom and dad in the back. When we go into our Super C, a lot of the times we've got a little bit less sleeping, but we've got a large refrigerator, for example, maybe a washer dryer because the chassis can handle that extra weight, and now a king size bed. So all those things are super, and that's why they call it a Super C.
Yeah, those are super things. Yeah. King size bed, washer and dryer.
Bigger fridge.
Okay, it's making sense. And yes, I do see that with the Class C. It makes sense that there's just more room to take more people, more kids. You've got the automatic extra sleeping space over the cab.
Exactly.
So, Karl, we've talked a ton. You've been a wealth of knowledge, and there's so many options, obviously, in the RV space. But in the Class C category, if someone is pretty much set on some type of Class C, how would you recommend they go about deciding between the regular Class C or the Super C?
So the differences between the Class C and Super C, I think it comes down to what we talked about. Refrigerator size. I think when you get that Freightliner chassis, they can put a residential style refrigerator in there. King size bed, your fuel capacity. So Super C is going to give a lot more options than, say, the $100,000 or $120,000 Class C motorhome to zip maybe down to Mexico or up to Woods Canyon Lake, for example.
So what you're going to use it for is really going to be that determining factor, because maybe you don't need all of those things. But,
exactly.
Yeah.
But that's where I would really wish people would come to La Mesa RV and come and look and sit in these, lay on the bed, open the refrigerator, and actually look, if I put 2 gallons of milk in there, how much room is left? And I think depending on how they're going to use the motorhome, those are critical things they need to look at.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's another reason why, even though you can view everything online, getting in person, the inventory at La Mesa is huge. Enormous. So you actually do get to see all the different types and feel and touch in person, and it does make a difference.
Makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
And I think it helps at La Mesa to have that inventory that large. I think it helps the customer or the client in the long run, because they've got such a variety and can test drive each model. They get good guidance without high pressure. I think it's just a wonderful way to narrow down what they're looking for. And they're spending a lot of money. They're not buying a Honda Civic here. These are a major purchase. I mean, some people come in and buy these like they're buying a Honda Civic and the way they go, but then we have the ultra shopper that wants to know everything, and it takes them 2 or 3 months. So I think it's critical to come to a place that's got the inventory that we have.
Yeah, that's a great point. So we're going to continue these discussions to help people, but this is really just scratching the surface, because there's so much to know.
Yes.
Getting with someone like you who has the knowledge and can walk someone through that process is kind of that next step.
Without the high pressure.
For sure. So I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Lauren.
That's it for today's episode of The Perfect RV Match. A big thank you again to Karl for sharing his expertise and breaking down the differences between the Class C and Super C motorhomes. Whether you're looking for a nimble, family-friendly coach or a powerhouse luxury rig, there's a perfect fit out there for your lifestyle. If you're ready to explore these models for yourself, click the link in the bio or stop by your nearest La Mesa Rec van location. Leave us comments or questions, and don't forget to follow the podcast so you never miss an episode that could help you find your perfect RV match. Until next time, happy travels.